You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com. You wanted it, you got it. A radio program that helps teach you options trading inside and out, basic to complex. This is Options Bootcamp. Whether you want to learn how to protect your portfolio, generate income, or even become a master of volatility, the Options Bootcamp drill instructors will break it all down for you. Now, let's get you into peak options trading shape. Here are your Options Bootcamp drill instructors.
All right, everybody. That music means we are back once again. Time for another Education Wednesday. And for you lucky cats out there in the secret club, time for another live doubleheader of Options Bootcamp. All you folks on the on-demand side will get the second episode down the road a bit. My name, of course, Mark Longo from theoptionsinsider.com, as well as from the ever exciting, ever engaging, hopefully ever educational Options Insider Radio Network. Reminding you a couple of things right here at the top of the show. If you like what you hear, do keep rating and reviewing on your platform of choice, just like our friend 1944 did here. He said, title of his review is Options Experts. And he wrote, Mark and the guys at Options Bootcamp are very informative. I have learned so much. Everyone these days claims to be experts on one thing or another, but these gentlemen are the real deal. Wow. We appreciate you taking the time, you and everyone else out there who takes the time to rate and review. We've been doing the show for over a decade. We have a long archive of reviews and people who like the show. We appreciate all of you. All the new folks who endeavor to do it clearly does help the algorithm and help new people discover the show. So if you do like what you hear, do keep rating and reviewing. And of course, if you want more content, you have more questions, and hey, who doesn't have more questions these days? Right? These markets are crazy. Then you want to head on over to theoptionsinsider.com/pro. We just had an awesome pro Q&A session with none other than the Viceroy himself, Mr. Alex Jacobson, back by popular demand. Haven't talked to him in about a year, so that was fascinating stuff. He's always a popular one out there. He was old school on the old Option Block show way back in the day from Schwab, and of course, he's been around the business forever. Loves answering your questions. We had a ball with that. A lot of our pro listeners did. If you want to take part in those kind of pro Q&A sessions, pick the brain, some of the best minds in the world of options and derivatives, as well as, of course, listen live, heckle Mr. Dan and everybody else here live on this show, everything else we do throughout the week. Great giveaways, early access to content, not just on the live stream today. We're going to put the extra episodes we record here today. Those are going up early as a bit of an exclusive bonus for our friends on the Pro podcast feed. So a lot of great stuff there. Nearly 200 episodes of shows already awaiting you on that feed. So what are you waiting for? theoptionsinsider.com/pro. And what are we waiting for? Well, we're waiting for the timely arrival of none other than the black-hatted one himself, Mr. Dan Passarelli from Market Taker Mentoring, what the cool kids call to Mr. P, welcome back to the show, sir.
Hey, what is up, my man? It is good to be boot camping again.
It's good to be boot camping. And I got that old feeling on me. I got the old Fed decision imminent feeling. You know, remember the old days? They used to measure the briefcase on Greenspan. What fun we had back in the day, Dan.
Indeed. Those were the days.
I don't think anyone's measuring Powell's briefcase anymore. Does anyone even carry a briefcase anymore? It's kind of old school now, isn't it?
Yeah, what is a briefcase?
Yeah, you just bring it. It's all on your phone and like your tablet, right? Or maybe your laptop. So you can measure, I guess, the thickness of his laptop. Not quite the same indicator, I don't think, Dan.
No, I don't think so.
All right. Instead, let's keep on rolling. Well, before we get to that really quickly, I've been kind of mulling over some fun additions to the show here. I know we get a lot of questions from people on this show in particular, asking us kind of what we're up to right now, what we're trading, what we're slinging out there in the markets. These are kind of some crazy topsy-turvy times. So maybe we'll start before we get into some of the Q's and our A's out here with a little bit of what we got on our radar, what we're trading. I know you're always raiding out there and you're slinging different things. Folks want to know, Dan, what you trading these days?
Oh man, I am. I've been doing a lot of credit spreads and consequently wing spreads. I've been I'll tell you what, I've been doing a lot of straddles. I was looking at a graph of the MOVE index relative to the VIX index. And for those of you who aren't familiar with the MOVE index, that's basically like the VIX for bonds. And the implied volatility is massively higher in bonds than it is for equities, for the VIX. And, I was thinking, why would this be the case? And you know what reason I came up with? No reason. I don't see any reason at all for that. And so I think that equity volatility is massively underpriced. So I've got a good handful of straddles on right now in a couple different names, and just looking for more opportunities.
Yeah, we don't talk about the MOVE index too often on this program. There are many different flavors of volatility out there, listeners. Many different ways you can slice up the volatility pie out there. And the MOVE is clearly one. Obviously, everyone knows VIX, which is predominantly S&P 500, aka equity volatility. The MOVE attempts to replicate that for the fixed income space. We all know there's been a lot of action out there in the world of fixed income. Let's look at all the banks that are blown up because they hold a bunch of supposedly riskless treasuries. So, a little bit of action out there. If only they had maybe studied a little bit of options boot camp and maybe learned how to buy a put on all those treasuries, damn, you wouldn't really be having these problems we're having right now. But hey, I digress out there. But it's fascinating times. You're right. I've been trading a little bit of volatility as well, which is always fun. A little bit of UVXY, some of our old friend ratio put spreads. We've seen vol come in a little bit. I've been taking advantage of that with some little long one, short two ratio put spreads on UVXY. Not a ton because UVXY has kind of gotten down to its nadir. It usually hangs out around. Once it gets below 10, they're going to talk about reverse splitting it. It's down around 5 now, so I didn't want to do a ton, but it's a fun little one to play around with if you want to take advantage of some vol coming off fairly aggressively. The same thing along those lines. SVIX, we talked about that in that show. It's not the most liquid of options products, but I was able, if you're a little deft on the trigger finger, they do seem a little bit more willing than I expected to actually fill you on some trades out there. So I was able to get off some funky broken wing flies to the upside. So as we have seen vol come off a bit from the elevated levels we just saw, which again, when vol is flirting with 30, VIX is flirting with 30, that's hard to sustain unless we have really protracted series of shocks to the system over and over again. So in most of those environments, vol is going to come off. I was able to leg into some broken wing flies for some pretty impressive levels. I was kind of surprised. I kind of threw the orders out there just to kind of see. I haven't played around with SVIX in a while. And again, the markets, when you first look at them, pretty terrifying. But they stepped up and filled me, so I was kind of surprised. So being able to leg into some of that kind of fun is always interesting as a way to keep an eye on what's going on out there in the markets as we keep an eye on some of your questions and kick it off a little bit of the old basic training.
All right, Boot, it's time to get in line. What you're going to do is learn. You're going to learn how options work. Do you hear me? You're going to learn options trading inside and out, basic to complex. There will be no failures. Do you hear me? Pull in, prepare to learn.
Every day, Flag Day, 4th of July here on the old Options Bootcamp program. Always feels sunny and celebratory here on the show. This topic today was kind of inspired by a question we received recently. We actually touched on it on a recent episode, and I said we might come back to it when we have a little bit more time to devote to it. The question came in from William Adams. He says, "Hi, Mark. I hope you are doing well." Well, thank you. I am doing well. Hope you all are doing well out there as well. He continues, "I am an avid options trader and love learning about new options strategies and tactics." Well, you came to the right place here, William. He goes on to write, "I enjoyed meeting you at a live conference in Chicago last May." Yes, I do believe I recall the event you were talking about. We had some friends of the network here in town. They asked me to show up at their event, and we did a live Volatility Views episode, I do believe, which was kind of fun. Glad you enjoyed it there, William. He says, "I remember speaking to you about attending an options industry conference at that Chicago event. If possible, Could you send me a list of upcoming trading and options-related events that you feel are worth consideration over the remainder of 2023? Best wishes for your continued success, William from St. Louis. Well, thank you for your question, William from St. Louis. And rather than just putting together a random list, I'll do you one better. We'll talk about it here on the show today. So I recall the event you're talking about and the event we discussed there, which was, I believe at the time, the Options Industry Conference. That's the OIC conference. We typically attend that every year. Obviously, the last few years have kind of been a little bit strange for that one. It was virtual, obviously, in 2020 and 2021, and there were a lot of craziness going on with that event in the early days of the pandemic. That said, the name of that one, Options Industry Conference, I wouldn't necessarily recommend that for a lot of the listeners of this show because it's in the title. That's an industry event. If you are somehow a professional participant in this industry, you work for an exchange, you work for a broker, you work for a trading firm, a vendor, then you have an interest in that because you can go meet with other people in the space, network, do biz dev, all that kind of fun stuff. For us, it's a great place to go because a lot of our contributors, a lot of our guests, sponsors are all kind of there in one place so we can meet up with everybody at once. We get to record a lot of content there. So it's great for us. We get to learn about all the latest and what's going on. All these questions you guys ask, for example, about, hey, will we have 0-day contracts listed on single names? I get to put those questions to the head of, the Options Clearing Corp and stuff at events like that. So we get a lot of insight into that stuff for you folks here on the network. So it's very valuable for us. I would not recommend you attend that one. But Dan, you've been to OIC a few times. I've seen you at various OICs around the country. A, would you recommend OIC for some of our listeners? And then B, I have a feeling you have an event coming up that may actually fit this bill, sir.
Yes. So I would not recommend OIC for most of our listeners. It's really a more, man, I'm getting a crazy echo here. That's really weird. So how's that? Hey, there we go. We fixed it. Yeah, I would not really recommend OIC for most of our listeners because it's really geared towards like the real like inside industry people. It would be like somebody who really likes going to the movies, showing up at the Oscars, trying to get in. If you did, you can buy a ticket, but if you did get in, people would probably give you some weird looks like, why are you here? Because it's kind of just really where like a lot of the exchange business and payment for order flow business and stuff happens, real insider minutia industry stuff. But because of that, that's why I hold an annual event, and it's called our Option Trader Training Retreat. And that is on June 22nd to 24th. We're actually doing an online training on straddles tonight, this afternoon, and also another encore of it this week. And at the end, I'll mention our retreat and give you a special discount. But hey, if you know that something like that is for you, it's going to be in Sonoma, California, June 22nd through 24th. There are limited spaces because the room can only hold so many people. And if you know it's for you and you're ready to join now, just go to markettaker.com/retreat and sign up while the discount is there. And if not, if you still have some questions, you can email me anytime. Just go to our website and hit contact us, and I'll be glad to give you some details about it.
That's a 2-day event?
A 3-day event.
3-day
Thursday,
event.
Friday, Saturday.
All right, strap in, listeners. You're going to get your options learning on. But if that sounds like that's for you and you want to go down into the deep end of the pool, do some learning, and maybe check out some wine with Mr. Dan as well, then head on over to markettaker.com and check it out. But that also raises an interesting question, Dan. What are some other events that I think would be suitable for the audience of this program? Like, I just came back from another conference, the Futures Industry Association Conference. Once again, that industry word is in that title. I would not recommend that event, the one I just went to at least, the Boca version, for any of the listeners of this show, because again, it's not suited for this audience unless you want to go deep into market structure. Or maybe last year if you wanted to watch SBF be interviewed by A-Rod on stage. Maybe that one was up your alley. I heard a lot of stories. I didn't go last year, but I heard a lot of stories about that one. That sounded, shall we say, everyone's washing their hands of it now, of course, but last year apparently that was all the rage. So good times to be had there. That said, if you are going to be in Chicago later this year, FIA holds another event. It's called the FIA Expo in Chicago. It's October 2nd and 3rd. It's down here at the Hilton in Chicago. And again, a lot of the events I'm going to talk about, at least, are going to be here and around Chicago, because this is still kind of the options trading mecca, and these are the ones we're most familiar with. Maybe you folks listening at home have ones you like to go to. You could write in as well in your local area. I'd be curious to hear about them as well. But FIA Expo, I wouldn't say register for the conference because it's the same thing as an industry event, but there are a lot of places you go towards, let's say, late summer or August. You can start looking at websites or maybe some newsletters you read. They'll send out passes saying, hey, here's a free Expo Hall pass to the FIA Expo coming up in Chicago. I got you in for free. Usually there's a price just to get in there. And there's usually 50 or 100 different vendors down there just showing off all different kind of wares. So if you're intrigued by the world of trading and options and derivatives, you want to see what some of the bleeding edge stuff is, probably get a whole bunch of swag too. They're always giving out all kinds of cool swag there. And maybe kind of see what's going on. There are also usually some panels and sessions you can get into for free that are being held down there on the exhibit hall as well. So that said, if you're going to be in Chicago October 2nd and 3rd of this year, it's worth it. It's free. Spend a half a day down there. Check out the exhibit hall. Literally, it's the biggest exhibit hall that I know of for options and derivatives event. And it might be interesting. You might learn some interesting new things. Maybe you find a new platform for your trading or whatever the case may be. There's all kinds of stuff down there. There's fintech startups, you name it. So it's kind of a cool show if you like to immerse yourself in the options and derivatives world. That said, if you want some more trading-oriented content, I would first off, I stay clear of a lot of the events that are aimed at the retail audience, which is, of course, this show, for a very, very simple reason. I mean, we have pretty high standards here on this network. We won't let anyone just come on and cut us a check and come talk to you guys. We try to filter those people out. Unfortunately, a lot of the paid industry events out there, they don't really hold their contributors to the same standards. So a lot of the events you go to, you have to really be careful who you're listening to because they don't filter them at all. If they're willing to pay, then they will allow them to speak. And so there's big ones out there. I won't name them. I don't feel like getting into lawsuits with others out there, but there are a lot of the big ones you may have heard of that maybe come to your area, or they go to Las Vegas, or they go to Orlando, some other areas, and they're well known in those areas. I would probably steer clear of those because the contributors are not always the best. One I have had some interesting dealings with here. Again, this comes into Chicago, and it's coming back again this year, September 26th and 27th. It's going to be at Navy Pier down here in Chicago. It's called the Trading Show Chicago. Very on-the-nose title. I believe they also have New York and other variants of this as well. And I was more impressed by everything at these events versus some of the more retail-oriented events for a couple of reasons. First off, it's aimed at a higher-level audience, so it's really aimed at the professionals out there in the business and the professional traders. So you got to be a little bit higher level to go to this. Our buddy, Mr. Matt Amberson from Orats, he came and spoke at the one last year here in Chicago. I've done hits down at that event in the past, and I've always been impressed by the level of firms that are speaking there. And the attendees seem to just be very high level. You're going to get into some high level stuff there. I think Matt was talking about some of his junk options, the garbage out of the money puts and calls, and some of the strategies they're in. So you're going to get into some higher level stuff at that. But if that sounds like that's fun for you, then it might be worth checking this one out. Again, that's no blanket guarantee. You still have to be a little bit judicious with which sessions you attend. Some might be more overtly promotional than others. But in general, if you find a speaker you like, you think is good, or maybe someone you've heard on our network here is going to be speaking down there, you can usually rely on those at least. I'm sure Matt will probably be going back down there again. That's a good one. The Trading Show Chicago. I believe they have a New York spinoff. I'll have to look up what the dates are for that, but you can search Trading Show New York, I believe, as well. And there are other flavors. I believe they're doing one on an aircraft carrier this year. They wanted me to come out and do a show on an aircraft carrier. I'm not sure if we're going to make that happen. Sounds like a fun area to do a show. So, A, Dan, are you down for a little bit of a show on an aircraft carrier with me? And then B, what are your other thoughts on some other events people should or should not attend out there, sir?
Aircraft carrier that could be interesting. Maybe. Yeah. Okay. Let's wait and see what they have to say about that. But like a couple things, like you were talking about FIA and the Chicago Trading Show. I've gone to both of those, and they are. I mean, they're great for what they are. But I honestly kind of stopped going to them because a lot of them are, they're not quite like the OIC event, but, they are like for high frequency traders. There's high frequency trading systems, and, there's very super high speed stuff high speed in the figurative sense, where it's like definitely, I would say that both of those are still definitely geared towards professional traders. And me, like, sort of having devoted my life now, I guess, to helping retail traders, I wasn't really finding much there that could help you. And so if I can't find anything to help you, there's no point in me being there. So, if you do decide to go and check those out, just go in with expectations and maybe have a plan B to, go to the tallest building in the U.S. or something and do some sightseeing or something, because, you might not find exactly what you're looking for. And, Mark made an interesting point about retail trader shows. It's one way the industry really changed. Like 10, 15 years ago, there were a lot of opportunities for folks who watch our show, what your broker calls retail traders, to go to a place and meet people and actually learn things. But yeah, I mean, I observed the same thing Mark's saying. Even the ones that were good in the past, I mean, here's what happened. People stopped, and it wasn't even COVID, it was long before COVID. People stopped going to in-person events when they could watch webinars. And so because the number of attendees dropped dramatically, even those shows that were good, they'll let anybody who will pay them in. And some of it is just like embarrassing, like the people who don't really know anything about trading or anything and will not only not help you, but will hurt you, And so, those of you who have listened to the show a while, that I've got a little bit of a contrary streak sometimes. And so because basically the rest of the world stopped doing in-person events or just like poisoned them with letting bad actors in, that's when I decided to start doing them. And that's when I started my retreat. And that's why I do it, just to give you an opportunity to go in person and meet other traders and get some really great education. I know like I'm always trying to improve myself in various different ways. I've spent like over $100,000 in online classes over the last 5 years, like legit. And not just online classes, but classes. And I know that when I'm doing an online class, sometimes I'll space out. I'll check my email. I even got busted by Mark a couple times on this show trading or something while I'm supposed to be listening. But, when you go in person to an event, holy cow, now all your attention is focused. And I personally get a lot more out of it then. So, yeah, I'm a big, big fan of in-person events, just that they're few and far between these days.
Options Bootcamp actually born at a live educational event. I believe you and I were both speaking in Las Vegas at an event, I recall. Which, first off, I learned my good lesson that day, which was don't go to Las Vegas in August. My God, that was hot. I walked off the plane and I almost turned around and got back on. I said, this is like walking into an oven. But B, you and I got roped into doing a panel with the folks from Futures Magazine.
Oh, that's right.
Yes. And we talked about options, and it was all sorts of fun. And that panel was good. I think the rest of the event probably not so much out there. But that was the genesis of all this madness. A decade plus later, listeners of Options Bootcamp was back at, I believe it was a Money Show event out there in Las Vegas back in the day. By the way, you mentioned the trading show being for a lot of HFT and crypto. That is very much the focus of the event. I was looking for the website while you were talking to try to break it down for people. And their description is: the Trading Show Chicago brings you cutting edge products and solutions from 3 focused streams of content dedicated to the inclusion of high-performance computing, traditional and alternative data, machine learning, blockchain, and cryptocurrencies. So they say, join us at Navy Pier, where algo trading, HPC, data, AI, and digital assets all meet with their premier institutional trading firms. So that sounds like, again, there's institutional in there. There's data. There's a lot of things that maybe you're not interested in, but if you're interested in crypto, if you're interested in some of the other trading, and there are options-oriented sessions in there as well. Again, that's what Matt was doing last year. Kind of have to pick and choose. But that one, at least, I thought was a little bit, shall we say, higher level. It wasn't just your standard, hey, everyone there cutting a check. You're still going to find that at any event. You're not immune from that. But that one was a little bit better, at least, compared to the ones that are just nakedly and slavishly devoted to the retail side of the space. Mr. Dan, before we get out of here, let's do a real quick mail call.
Mail call. Time to look at questions submitted by our listeners.
All right, let's do it. Mr. P, the folks are waiting. We've held them back long enough, but now they must have it. They must have it in their earlobes, sir. What is your Dan Passarelli question of the week?
I have gotten some questions recently. I've gotten a handful of these questions over the past couple of months, just with implied volatility having been above what kind of used to be the norm, which I consider 16, for the past few years. People struggle with buying calls or puts for that matter, just those straight directional trades. And they're like, man, this doesn't work. Like, is there a way to make it work? And, sometimes like I do a bunch of spreads because spreads are usually better. But, sometimes I want to do directional trades. And I'll tell you what, one of the things that is a trade that I've been familiar with for a while, and I traded, hundreds of times in my career, but really came to appreciate a lot more lately is like directional butterflies. And directional butterflies can be like just super, super powerful trades. And so that is something, directional butterflies and directional time spreads, instead of going and just buying a call, look into those. One of the things that I tell all of our student traders is whenever you're looking to make a trade, always look at 3 different ways to trade it. Like, hey, I'm bullish on this. Maybe I'll buy a call, but maybe I'll also look at a directional butterfly and maybe a bull call spread, and then decide which one is the best. And then the follow-up question I get is, but Dan, how do you know which one is the best? If you just go through that exercise, it's going to come to you, like you're going to see it. And maybe you don't pick the exact, mathematically optimal one each time, but just going through that exercise, you will begin to make massively better trades. So, keep that on your radar. Directional butterflies.
Sounds like your dog agrees there, sir.
Yeah, my dog's crazy, man.
Dog likes a good butterfly out there. I'm a fan of a good butterfly. I like them. I was just talking about doing broken wing flies in SVIC, so they have their use case. Sometimes you go out there, Dan, you look at the option chain, you think about buying a call, and you're like, how much is that call?
Yeah.
Let me try again. Let's look at perhaps a butterfly, and that's when things start to make a little bit more sense. So, yeah, sometimes you just feel it in your bones, listeners, which one is the right one. Unfortunately, that music means we've come to the end of a fun sojourn. It's a tough topic. What are good in-person events for trading that you guys can go to that we're comfortable recommending here on the show? Because there aren't that many, because, again, that's just how rife with scammers the in-person industry has become. A lot of it has shifted online, too, as well, as Dan mentioned. But we'll mull it over. Maybe we'll come up with some others that we are comfortable recommending. In the meantime, if you're listening out there and you have an event you've attended, you thought, hey, this was pretty good. I was actually surprised by the quality level of the speakers and the attendees. Then I'm curious. Hit us up. Let us know. We'll check it out. And if we think it's interesting, we'll share it with your fellow listeners here on the show. Of course, there are always events. Your broker, if they're worth their salt, will be having educational events online all the time. So there is no shortage of that kind of content to find now versus a decade ago. It's just shifted into that online component versus in-person. So intriguing stuff out there. And before we go, Mr. Dan, remind them again, if they are intrigued, they want to join you for not the 2-day, but a 3-day options extravaganza. Some might say just an options party for the ages. Where should they go? What should they do?
Sure, yeah. If you know that, yes, this is for me, and, you want to come out and meet me and maybe Mark. I'm going to try and talk Mark into coming out this year. He did a, special guest spot on video last year. But come on out, and if you know for sure you want to come, grab the discount right now. It's just at markettaker.com/retreat. And if you just have a couple quick follow-up questions too, you know how to find me. Go to our website, hit contact us, and I'll tell you all about it.
There you go. Get on over there, markettaker.com. Don't forget the second T for Theta. And that is going to do it for us here on the old Options Bootcamp. But you know what? We're not done with Education Wednesday. All you live folks and all you folks listening on the Pro Podcast feed, you're going to get a second episode in your ear holes right now. The rest of you have to wait a week to get this content. So we'll see you all in a few minutes on the live side. And for the rest of you, we'll see you next week on another episode of Options Bootcamp.
You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com.